friends way out south, can't we?
Hello, everyone. Good evening. What's the date? The 6th of October? No, it's later than that. It's the 7th. Good evening and welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here. There's Dallas right on time, hustling in from Worcester County. Thank you, Dallas. I know I'd like to see what the Maryland State Police are doing as they watch you come by every first and third Thursday. So we'll call this meeting to order. Thanks, everybody, for being here. First things first is an approval of tonight's agenda. Can I get a motion for that? Thank you, Tony. Second from, where was that? Phil? Thank you. Any changes, adjustments? All right, all those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Next, I need a motion to approve the minutes from our September the 16th meeting. Tony, thank you. Bob, thank you. Any changes to or adjustments to the minutes? All right, all those in favor of approving them, please say aye. 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 That carries unanimously. Sitting in the seat of the esteemed Paul Wilbur is the esteemed Dr. Harry Basehart. We got Dr. Basehart's resume, his CV from earlier, but the short version is he's a retired political science faculty member from Salisbury University, and he's the founder of PACE, which I think is co-founder, with Dr. Kane. So I believe you were with us back in April or May when we first got all of this started, and you've done some homework and want to present something on section, I think it's 201, is it not?
I think you're right.
Okay,
Yeah.
Great. So welcome. Thank you for coming back, and the seat and the floor is yours. So.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank
Yes,
you,
sir.
Mike, and thank you, Bob, two good co-chairs, I know. And I'd like to thank the committee members for taking on the task of evaluating and recommending changes in the Wicomico County Charter. Examining the structure and process of governing is too often neglected, so you're doing good work. And what I'm going to do tonight is just maybe talk not any more than 10 minutes, and I'll be glad to answer questions, and you can get on to other items on your agenda. But I'd like to start by saying that there isn't a better time than right now, today, Thursday, October 7th, to discuss redistricting. After the 2020 census, cities, counties, and states across the nation are redrawing legislative and council district lines as required by law. Redistricting has been a teaching and research interest of mine for over 40 years. I understand its importance to local democracy, and I also understand the power politics, if you will, that too often comes with it. I want to cover three topics: a review of the existing county council redistricting procedure, identify what is wrong with the procedure, at least in my opinion, and propose a better way. So I'll get right to it. Current redistricting procedure. Redistricting, as established by the county charter, and Mike mentioned, is in Article 2, Section 201B. Even with a quick read, it's obvious that almost complete control is given to the county council. The council appoints members of a redistricting commission, but no criteria exist for selecting members, not even the number of members required to do the job. The commission is not required to seek public input or hold a public hearing, although their meetings are open to the public, but there's no requirement for a public hearing. They are required to prepare a plan, make it available to the public, and present it to the council. Only the council, not the commission, is required to hold a public hearing. After the council hearing, what happens to the commission's proposal? Well, the council has total discretion. It may adopt the plan, and this is a quote from the charter, it may adopt the plan as presented or may make any modifications or amendments to the plan. So the council has complete control of drawing district lines. That's the existing procedure. What's wrong with this procedure? And this really won't take too long because I want to paraphrase, it's not a direct quote, it's a paraphrase of Governor Hogan, who says this way of redistricting, now he's not talking specifically about Wicomico County, but he's talking about this way of redistricting, which we're all familiar with. It says, Governor Hogan says, it allows elected representatives to pick their voters, not voters to pick their representatives. And I agree with that. It's not original with Governor Hogan. It's frequently heard that the way we do redistricting allows the elected representatives to pick their voters, so to speak, which is literally true, and rather than the voters picking their representatives. The voters are forced to choose from the districts that elected representatives want to have for themselves. That's my criticism of it. 3, is there a better way? I hope Commission members will consider changes that move toward fairness, which is difficult to accomplish with redistricting. By fairness, I mean simply a dictionary definition, fair or impartial treatment, lack of favoritism toward one side or the other, just that simple definition. For your reference, as Mike and Bob have mentioned or we've talked about, I did submit to the committee chairs a 3-page revision of the Charter's districting article and a 1-page timeline to illustrate how this procedure would work if you find it worthy. And you might want to look at that if you get into more discussions about changing redistricting. Fundamentally, we need a revitalized redistricting commission, greater public input, more specific criteria in the actual drawing of lines, and a consensus approach to final approval. Let me say this again. We need a revitalized districting commission, first of all. Second, greater public input. Third, more specific criteria in the actual drawing of lines. And fourth, a consensus approach to final approval. Here are my suggestions. Appointment. The redistricting commission I propose will have 9 members, each approved by 4 votes of the 7-member county council. Actually, this reflects current procedure, except I suggest that 9 members be the official size of the redistricting commission. It's currently 7. The important change is that 3 members will be registered with the largest political party in the county, 3 registered with the second largest political party in the county, and 3 members registered, as we say in Maryland, unaffiliated, or more commonly we call independent. So this is how goes by voter registration. The chair will be selected by the commission with approval of 6 members, reflecting a consensus approach. So that's how I would name the commission. Now, public involvement. The commission will be required to hold at least 2 meetings for public input, one before the actual drawing of lines and one after the commission has a draft report and map. 2 weeks before the second meeting, the draft report and data used to draw the new lines will be uploaded to the county website, Now, next criteria for drawing lines. First, well, these will be prioritized, most important on down. First, equality in district population. No district can be more than 5% above or below the average population for all 5 districts. That is the, I'm sure you all know, is the given. That's Supreme Court decisions, maybe not the 5%, but equality in population, that is the first thing that has to be met. Second, racial minorities will have the opportunity to elect candidates of their choice. Again, that's the court requirement interpreting the Constitution. Third, election chances of an incumbent or candidates of a particular political party cannot be increased or decreased. So that's specifically an anti-partisan gerrymandering criteria. Fourth, boundaries of municipal governments within the county will be respected as much as they can be. This is lower priority, but generally not dividing. It's not always possible. That's the trouble with redistricting. In any criteria you like, you'll find situations where it won't work. but boundaries of municipal governments will be respected. And then fifth, districts will be required to be contained in a connected geographic area, or contiguity as it's usually called. And then final approval. Approval of the commission's plan requires at least 6 votes of the 9 members of the commission, including 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and 2 unaffiliated to a party members. Final approval by the county council requires 5, not 4, 5 votes of the 7 members. If the council disapproves of the plan, its written objections will be sent to the commission. The commission will make such modifications as it deems appropriate and return the revised plan to the council. The council then must decide between the original plan and the revised plan. So there is a decision has to be made, and you have to decide between the original and the revised plan that probably has had some county council input. So these 4 suggestions reflect 2 major changes in the existing procedure. To step back a little bit and look at what's involved here. First, the commission will have much greater role in redistricting than the council. But the council will still have some influence through appointment of commission members and approval of the final redistricting plan. But it'll be definitely a revitalized commission. Second, a consensus or supermajority, not a simple majority, is required to make decisions. For example, election of a chair, as I mentioned, requires approval of 6 of the 9 members of the commission. And the draft plan requires approval of 6 of the 9 members of the commission. Approval by the 7-member council will need 5 votes. So there's an effort to bring in a supermajority requirement in the council's selection of commission members and of the actual process, so that it's more of a consensus process than almost everybody has now. It's not a consensus process. In closing, because of the timing of the charter review and approval of changes, this revision will not be used until 2031. It will not be used this year because the lines have to be drawn in the next few weeks, or at least a couple of months. Candidacy filing is in February. February 22nd is the deadline. So it'll be used after the 2030 census. This, I think, gives you a chance to decide from a long-term perspective. I don't think we have to be concerned about the immediate impact of this type of change. We can take a long-term perspective, I think, of the public good, and not as part of the give and take of a redistricting process as it goes on nationwide today. Thank you very much for listening. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Dr. Basehart, first and foremost, thank you for the presentation. Okay. Questions or thoughts, anyone? I'll ask a few if nobody else has any. So I just asked the group, in theory, if this proposal that was just shared was something that this group was interested in putting forward. Mr. Wilbur, I guess I might ask you, that's a big ask of a voter in a ballot box. So I'm not sure how we as a Charter Review Committee could make that recommendation. I'm not here to say, actually, I will say I like the recommendations. I'm a big fan of what Governor Hogan is attempting to do, personal opinion. That said, you're talking about something that would happen at the earliest 2031, as you just said. So I might ask you, the question I might ask directly of you is, would consideration of a new way of redistricting best be put to the Office of County Executive or to the County Council directly and let them work through, if you will, this is political in nature, right? We all know that. What's your thought on that? Because this would be a significant lift for the Charter Review Committee. So given that there's time between, this is not an immediate change in any election that's forthcoming. In other words, could perhaps a commission to look into redistricting be put forth by the county executive and the county council, as opposed to coming from a recommendation of the Charter Review Committee?
And could that be put on the ballot then? Like in 20...
To be,
okay.
to be determined, correct.
Yeah.
As you know, we only gather every 10 years currently, the Charter Review Committee.
Yeah.
And you're talking about a proposal that would take 10 years to go into effect. So,
one problem I see is that most redistricting reform does not come from elected representatives.
right.
It tends to come from the voters.
Yeah.
And I don't, Mr. Wilbur, I'm sure knows, can voters of Wicomico County circulate petitions and get a charter review proposal on the ballot? That would be my question I'd want to know the answer to.
Yes.
They can, yeah.
We all know the answer to that now after all these months.
And that's a big that's a big jump.
Sure it is.
If it would go to the council and the county executive, I really can't see that that they would come up with anything very simple, because they're having to give up power, and nobody wants to give up power. Now it might be, with the right leadership, a couple people who really wanted to push it, really believed in it, and I mean elected leaders, that could happen. I felt that since this is a charter review commission,
Absolutely.
that
Okay.
this would be something appropriate to the
Thank you.
charter. Yeah.
Yes, John. Yeah, if you go to the microphone, we'll accept a question from the public, from our alternate member of the CRC. Yes, sir.
Question for you, Mr. Basehart. The changes that you're proposing or that you've described in your outline, are they being considered in other counties in the state of Maryland?
Not that I know of. The only county I've read a little bit about is Baltimore County, just from reading the Baltimore Sun. And, they do it pretty much the way Wicomico County does. Yeah. There are organizations like the League of Women Voters in particular that want to reform the redistricting process. I'm not real familiar with everything they do. I know they seem to focus on the state. I don't know if they've been looked at all the counties or if they have recommendations about the counties. I'm not, and I didn't do the research to find out how maybe Montgomery County redraws lines. I'm not sure. So I would have to say, yeah, I don't know.
Since so much of your suggestions are based from a sense of fairness, wouldn't that apply to all the other counties in Maryland?
Well, if you're, yeah, it certainly would, yeah. Yeah, and I would assume that the state legislature, if they wanted to get really involved in county affairs, they might be able to mandate something, but that's not going to happen either. So that is part of the dilemma of changing redistricting procedures.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good question.
Thoughts or questions? Yeah, sorry. So look, here's what we're going to do, and
But you just allowed one person.
I understand that. So yes, Mr. Taylor, yes, and then we're going to, I apologize.
Yes, Dr. Basehart, I know you've probably lived here as long or longer than me. It's been 50 years in my case.
That's about my case.
And probably seen more than one charter review commission. Have you got any specific objections from our past charter review commissions? Have they done anything wrong or that you feel is improper?
No, but I'm not certain of recommendations from the past, but I would say nothing has stuck out to me.
Nothing you
Yeah.
can speak of tonight.
Right, right.
The next question I have is of the criteria you gave. There were 5 items. I missed one of them. the equality, the 5% rule, the district contiguity, pardon me for the mispronunciation, the boundaries, the racial minorities issue, all of those are now required under federal and state law, I believe, aren't they? So what you're suggesting for criteria wouldn't add anything. It would just be what the law is right now. And you
May
also...
I respond to that?
Sure.
However, there are some criteria in the county charter, and since they're in there now, I think it makes sense to reiterate those or expand on them.
So essentially, everything is in the charter now where it's required by law.
There's there's nothing about public involvement, public input for the commission. And I do think that's important. The only place there's chance of public input, a public hearing, is when the county council gets ready to adopt.
Now, understand, I was speaking of the criteria that you mentioned.
Okay.
Under the
Yeah.
heading
All right.
criteria. The other thing is, I didn't get all the particulars of it about what would happen when the commission makes its report and how it's to be approved, and then it goes to the council, and what would happen if they didn't agree, and then it goes back to the commission. I'm not sure, I don't know whether you are or not, so I'm not suggesting one way or the other, but I'm concerned that that might not be lawful, because I believe redistricting is a legislative process, and legislative processes cannot be delegated by the legislative body. I'm just throwing that out as an item, that's all. I'm not saying that it's incorrect, I don't know, but something tells me that that needs strict scrutiny.
You mean my requirement that if the council wants changes in the commission's plan, they tell them, okay, here's some things we don't like about the plan, we think you should do this, we think you should do that. And then the commission considers those suggestions and makes some changes or doesn't make some changes to try to oblige the council, that the council is going to have to choose between one of those two, either the original or they're going to have to choose the modified plan from the commission. So they have a choice of two, and they still have authority.
Yeah,
But
I didn't get to read, I haven't read the three-page document, and frankly, I would suggest that be put on the website so people can see it in its entirety.
That's a good
But I
idea.
think that aspect of it needs to be looked at very closely, because I think there might be a concern that the way it's drafted or proposed by you, that there might be a delegation of the legislative process which should not be proper. Yeah.
That's an interesting point. I am certain, don't ask me to identify, but that there are states that have given commissions the authority to draw plans.
I'm sure you know, as a
Yeah.
political scientist, every state is different.
Yes.
They're almost
Yeah.
like different countries, and what they do in Timbuktu might not be the same as
Right.
here.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Okay, Phil? Yes, sir.
I think first of all, I did read Dr. Basart's suggestion, and I thought it might seem a little unwieldy trying to find independent voters, but they might be easier to find all the time. But it got me thinking, back, why do we have districts? And it's a result of the lawsuit from the Justice Department, and we created 5 districts, mainly so we get one of them be a minority district. Minorities have tended to move elsewhere and are part of every district. So, one way to solve this whole problem is do away with the districts altogether and say, well, then how can you ensure that the minorities, which make up 23 or 24% of the population, which just happens to be 1 out of 5, then you could just say that a minority, the highest voter getter, that's not a good term, who is a minority would be seated. That's another way to do it. And then you say, well, gee whiz, we created those districts for another reason. We didn't want, as the population of the county swarmed in around Salisbury, we didn't want to elect a county council that just had all people from this major municipal area. So, there's a lot to it, but I'm wondering if it's not possible for us as a charter review, since this is in the charter, to suggest just what you said, that the county government appoint a review committee to look into all possible aspects of this, to check with Butte, Montana, and see how they do it, and, just
Yeah.
really go into it a lot deeper than we're going to be able to go
Right.
into it here.
Thank you, Phil. Matt, I think you had your
Yeah, the
comment.
only thing I was going to say is, as I envisioned what you're suggesting, Dr. Basehart, it really wouldn't be a whole lot different than what we're doing. And we have no legislative power here. We merely, as a group of 15 or 18, are going through this, right, getting down into minutia and trying to come up with a consensus of what we think needs to be changed and what we think that change ought to look like. Once we pass it on, unless they come back and ask us, we're done. And so and the same thing could be done. The council legislatively would have to make the decision on what this redistricting would look like. They're going to make that final decision. I mean, I like a lot what I heard here this evening.
I see the hands. Go ahead, finish your
Okay.
thought, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sonia?
I just wanted a point of clarification, though, because I think the difference is that the council in the proposal, the council needed to choose between the two, the commission plan and the revised one after they had some feedback. Those are their choices. That's what your plan was, right? Or no?
This is, this is my contribution to the
No, I'm just trying to ask for clarity.
is that,
I'm
but no,
asking
you're
for
exactly right. That's how, I thought, how do you get out of this going back and forth and back and forth, and then ending up in court? Well, I'll just force the council to select one of them.
And I'm asking because I'm on a redistricting thing for my sorority, and so we're looking at it for the state. And so, there's a citizens commission, and they're having all these public hearings, and there's a legislative one where now their public hearings are in person, but the legislators have the ultimate decision, kind of like what we're more so
Yeah.
like what
Yeah.
we're doing here. So it was just a difference that I heard.
Yeah.
I don't disagree or
No, you're
anything
right.
with
But that,
Okay.
that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tony?
Is the redistricting committee, there is a committee now that's looking.
Right now?
Yes.
Yes.
They are.
They're
And
in
are
session
they
right now.
Looking at, Harry, are they looking at things that you're talking about, or are they just looking at the numbers to get them balanced?
They have a real specific task to come up with a new plan and submit it to the council. And I did view on YouTube their last meeting, September meeting, and they have several plans they're looking at. Sort of one is a minimal change in lines, and the other is a balanced population. Another is 2% deviation, which actually for county government, you don't really have to be that small in deviation. You can be a little bit larger. So yeah, they're trying to come up with the plan, and it's pretty much focused. I mean, they know. Mr. Taylor's right. They know there has to be a minority district by court. There has to be that. So which I think happens a lot. It's how can we draw it with minimal change?
Right.
And
Could they incorporate some of the things that you're talking about, or aren't they in the channel to do it?
I would.
I don't know.
No.
Oh,
I mean, the criteria. If you, just give me a minute to find it for the, and I know I have it here. Let's see, 201B1, 201B1. The plan shall provide for council-managed districts that are reasonably compact, contiguous, and substantially equal in population. So there are criteria there. That's all there is, which is why I suggested adding some of the things that the court, we know we have to do, and some other things that I think would be good.
I'm looking for other hands. Any thought, Julie?
It was about, I think one of the concerns when we were looking at Section 201 was whether to add a district or whatever
Yes.
based on the population.
Catherine?
And I was wondering, I think this census did not change our population significantly, but 2031 it might.
Right.
Do you know what the tipping point might be?
You know, someone asked me about this a while back, and I Googled it, and to my surprise, someone had actually done some research on that, on Western Shore counties, and we were about right. You know, the number of people that our single-member districts represent, which I think is around 20,000, you know, that seemed about the right proportion for our population. But if I can find that, I'll send it to you. Because, yeah, at some point we may, maybe it's now, that we need another single-member district. I'm not sure we're there yet, but I can see that coming.
Catherine?
Water and sewer in, I think we might jump.
Sure. Catherine?
Thank you, Julie, for bringing that up, and thank you, Dr. Baser, for being here this night, or this evening. So this brings me back to very day one for the Charter Review Committee, and I was hoping that we could create a county council that had more diversity on it. And so it was my suggestion to possibly look at having 7 districts versus 5, and maybe be able to form 2 minority districts. Have you seen that work in the past, or any examples where that has been effective? We do have 2 districts that are maybe population-wise are equivalent to the other districts, but they're just such a great span of territory as well. So what are your thoughts on 7 districts?
You know, I really would have to think about this a little bit more. But you're exactly right. If there were 7 single-member districts, I'm sure there would be at least one more minority district. Yeah, at least one. Because if there's the opportunity to draw a minority district with maybe 60% population, you know, the courts pretty much ruled, well, you have to do it, or you're going to be taken to court.
And that was something possibly to consider, rather than 5 county councilmen and 2 at large, to have actually
Oh, just to have 7
districts
single
with
member.
7 council
Yeah,
members,
right.
and with the possibility of forming a second minority
Yeah.
district.
That's the other
Yeah.
option, yeah. And I haven't seen any research on the history has been, it was all at large, and then single member and at large, or all single member. I don't know what the trend is, or if there is a trend of fewer counties in Maryland or anywhere else having only single-member districts. Of course, our city council is only single-member districts, I believe. But I don't know what the trend is on that, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Basehart, thank you very much for your presentation tonight. This is a tall order, and I'm not sure where we're going to go with it, but I appreciate the time. We'll have some discussion about it. This is, as you know, and so for the record and for those who may be watching, Michelle and I were talking earlier about who might actually watch this. You know, part of our task and our challenge, which we're continuing with, is your plan, and I'm not, again, here to say whether it's a good plan or a bad plan, but if presented in whole, that would take an extraordinary amount of diligence by the voter coming from the Charter Review Committee, because that's a whole bunch of questions. And so I'm not sure if that recommendation could fit here, But again, Phil, to your point, sort of what I had written down, could we recommend as a charter review committee that the county executive and the county council look at redistricting and look at section 201, because we recognize both what Catherine's point was right now and what your points are, that in this entire charter, you know, what you just talked about, your entire presentation, I think is one paragraph in the charter. So if we were to take what you're recommending, your recommendations alone would add probably 3 or 4 pages to the charter. And in order to get approved, every voter in 2022 would have to go into that ballot and check every aspect of what you're talking about. So what does the group think about perhaps as a recommendation that we make? Dallas?
When we were talking last time, the discussion came up about how did the charter get amended to include the executive branch and the significant text that went along with that. As I recall, there was a simple line on the ballot that said, hey, you know, we're going to add an executive branch, and there was a lot of advertisement regarding the specific language on websites and things like that to address the issue, and it got passed. So I feel like if the issue is worth taking up, we shouldn't be worried about the amount of text that we're suggesting, because there's clearly a pathway to amend the charter with a lot of text, as again, the example of the executive branch that was added. So I just want to point that out.
Great point.
I don't think that we should
Say yes or no based on that.
based off of just on the text volume. If it's a worthwhile endeavor, it's a worthwhile endeavor.
Thank you, Dallas. Bob?
Mr. Wilbur, I'm going to ask you the same question I think I've asked before, but if we were to choose to do something like what Dr. Basart has suggested, can it be done in one amendment, or is this going to have to be broken up into separate parts to be presented to the voters?
I was talking with Mike earlier today. I think the question of what the ballot will look like is the key to it. When whatever the council comes up with charter amendments, there's going to be a huge advertisement in the paper with all the detail in it. And then the question is, what should the ballot look like? As I said, there's one AG opinion that talks about Baltimore City amending there with just one sentence. And they did a complete rewrite. I think that's a little extreme. I think I said last time that perhaps breaking the ballot question down into some sections would be the best way to do it. But we haven't come up with a definitive answer on that.
Is that for us to determine or for the county council? And
ultimately, that's what will the council do?
Right.
And we will be figuring out how do we present it to the public.
But that's not within our purview.
I don't think that has to be
Okay.
answered
But
tonight.
your inclination is that this can't be done in one question, it's going to have to be broken up into
I think so, yeah. At this moment, I'm not totally comfortable with just the voting public. Do you want to make ballot changes as published in the Daily Times? Yes, no. I don't think that's the way to go with it.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, you know, I read through this in some detail. I mean, to be honest with you, the suggestions that Dr. Basart has come up with, at least as to the 9 members and having 3 of the different parties, in essence, is kind of consistent with the conversation that this committee had with regard to if there was a vacancy. There was a suggestion made that there should be a provision to allow, you know, an independent to be done. So it's consistent in that regard. To be honest with you, the only thing I find in here that would seem to me to be the least bit controversial, and it's not controversial, I suspect, to voters, but it's the last provision about the approval by the county council. I'm not on the county council. I don't know how they would view it. I don't know why they would object to anything else in here, to be honest with you, because it provides some detail as to how this is supposed to be done. Because when you look at what's in here now, there are no details. I mean, it
There
doesn't say
are
how-
no, there's correct, there's
it has
one
no- It
paragraph.
has no numbers that are supposed to
Nothing.
be on the charter review or on the,
Yeah.
you know, the review committee. There's no specific dates. I mean, what Dr. Basart is proposing, he's
more.
filled it out, and it provides a basis for doing it. And I can't imagine that it would be significantly controversial. I don't know how it would be received. The other problem that I've had, and I keep raising, and I don't mean to beat a dead horse, is we, as a committee, we have to decide how many things we think can be submitted to the county council that are likely to be adopted by the county council. And part of that is, you know, in this instance, can you do this in one, you know, one ballot suggestion, or does it have to be broken up into 5? Because if it has to be broken up into 5, it's highly unlikely, I think, that at least in one election that the county council is likely to do that. And I know it's an impossible thing for Mr. Wilbur to do, but frankly, I think in making these decisions, we need as much guidance from Mr. Wilbur about how he thinks it likely would have to be done.
Sure,
Because
before
for
we
us,
make-
for us to start ranking these things,
Yeah,
you know, for what it's worth, Dr. Basart, for everybody's edification, I had the privilege of having Dr. Basart as a professor for a lot of classes. And it was a privilege on my part to have him. I'm not sure it was a privilege on his part.
you can remain silent on that if you want.
So, but I mean, I thought the proposal made sense, which is why I suggested we have him come in and make a presentation.
Yep.
And I just don't think much of it, 95% of it to me is not controversial. It makes sense. I just don't know whether the council would adopt the last section or not. And in making a decision whether to go forward, I frankly think that's going to make, from my point of view, is going to have a significant impact on whether we decide to do that. The second part of it is how many different ballot questions does Mr. Wilbur think we have to have?
Correct.
As it relates to this one proposal? Because I read this and I started reading 201B and I'm like, yeah, it doesn't say how many people are supposed to be on the committee. It doesn't say how many are supposed to be Republicans or Democrats or independents. It provides a roadmap that I think makes perfect sense. But it becomes a practical problem as a rather, I think it makes sense to do it. It's a practical problem is whether we can put it on, make the suggestion this time. I mean, I would hope that if we did this, that the county council might not be willing to do it in one fell swoop, but they might look at it over a number of elections before 2031 and start making those changes.
Right. Thank you, Bob. Michelle? Sonia, I'll get to you.
One point I want to bring up, we have a list of 30-odd items
Yep.
that came from the county council, things that they wanted us to go through, look at, and respond to. And 201 is not on that list at all. There's nothing in 201. Just a comment.
Noted. Thank you. Sonia?
I just wanted to clarify, and even though I was looking at the different county charters today, I wasn't looking at it for redistricting. So, do you know if other counties have as extensive of a program as what you had listed, or no? Somebody might have asked that question already. I apologize.
No, I haven't. In doing my research for this, I've tended to look more at I looked closely at Governor Hogan's proposal, and I looked at some other states, but I did not look at other counties in Maryland. I could do that, but I didn't.
We could do it, like I could do
Yeah.
it too. So,
Yeah.
no, that was just a question. And the other thing.
That's a good question, yeah.
I like the suggestion. I think that it's more than even this charter review committee. I like the suggestion of suggesting. We love to do a commission and things like that, but this is one that's actually worthy of it. And our timing that we're going to make these recommendations, hopefully we'll be done with redistricting by then, but it'll be fresh on people's minds. Yep. So I think that having people review it and understand it, especially because it is fresh in people's minds, not just for the county, but what's going on in the state and the nation and all those other good things, to look at it more deeply, and it's probably deeper than here.
Thank you, Sonia. Catherine?
I would love the opportunity to be able to speak from two representatives from the Redistricting Commission now, their thoughts on what his proposal, Dr. Basehart's proposal is,
Well,
to see if there's a sense of,
have you reached out to make this presentation to the Redistricting Commission to see if they'd be willing
Yeah.
to entertain it?
No, I've deliberately avoided mixing this
Right, understood.
with what they're doing.
Understood.
But certainly their comments on this would be interesting, yeah.
So-
But I haven't initiated that, but I can see where that would give you some information, yeah.
Here's what we're going to do for tonight, okay? We're going to thank Dr. Basehart. Thank you.
Thank you.
As a committee, I'm going to ask the committee, and we will add this, Laura, we'll add this to the agenda as a discussion item. We've spent 45 minutes on it tonight. I want the group to consider what everybody's heard tonight, right? We've heard a possibility of don't worry about how long it is, if it's the right thing to do, okay? We've heard, let's make a recommendation to perhaps form a commission and ask the county council, county executive. We've heard a recommendation to perhaps adopt it in whole or without that last paragraph that Bob has mentioned. But because this has come at us at this, I'm not going to call this the 11th hour, but this is yet another rabbit hole, right? We could spend the next hour and a half here. So for tonight, let's not take any action, but we will add this as an agenda item, and I will ask that anyone who has a motion to make regarding any change to redistricting, make it at the beginning of our next meeting. Any motion, whatever that might be, okay? And I don't care from whom it comes, but let's start the next meeting with giving full consideration to what has been presented tonight and whether we think it's appropriate for us to make some sort of recommendation moving forward.
Can we get,
We have,
can we get that, or can we make that part of the actual,
Yes.
yes,
can we get?
yes. And we can, I think somebody made the suggestion, Laura, maybe we can get this on the website too, yeah.
I
But
could do that, yeah.
to be clear, tonight, we are taking no action on Section 201. We've had a good discussion. Dr. Basehart, thank you for your passion on the topic. Thanks for laying out a plan for consideration. And perhaps at the very least, we can, I don't know, be the spark that ignites some discussion about this at a next level, or maybe it even comes from us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I make one, thank you
Yes,
very
sir.
much. I appreciate being here. And it
Yes,
was
sir.
a good discussion.
We appreciate
Good
it.
seminar. Just might add one thing.
Yes, sir.
That the question of at-large and single-member districts
Yep.
that Julie and Catherine mentioned, looking at districting, maybe it would be good to look at both of them together, separate, but at the same time, if you're really thinking.
Well, much like, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your effort and presentation. Thank you, everyone at the table, for discussion. Yes, Julie?
And this is in general, but it brought it up because of
Yep.
this. So if we have a 5-line item, 5 suggestions for 201 that perhaps made it to the public,
Sure.
so they could approve 3 and leave 2 at the end of the election? Since they're all split
Paul, why
out?
don't you take your normal seat and join us at the table? Thank you for giving, although he did say he likes the comfortable chairs out there. We're going to put you in front of the microphone and give him 1 second. Thanks, Julie. And let you weigh in on that question.
How the ballot question is presented, you're going to vote essentially yes or no on a ballot question. And I think the question we're all wrestling with is how to frame the ballot questions. Would you have one about redistricting with parts
A through F, and then you're going to say yes or no. It either goes through in toto or it dies.
So A through F is not little boxes next to each of them?
Right.
Okay.
That's one box for
Which
A
brings
through F.
up what we were discussing
Yeah.
about the last
So-
proposal.
I thought Paul said we probably couldn't do that. We probably had to break it up into more than one ballot question.
Yeah, when we're looking at changing all these different parts of the charter, I think we need to break it down so that the public might approve redistricting, but not approve some other part.
Right,
But
right,
the
understood.
proposal that Dr. Basehart made could be one ballot question?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't understand it that way.
No, me
Yeah.
neither. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Good discussion, thank you. Next on the agenda is an update from the man who just took his seat on various topics. Or, Paula, we kind of gave you some assignments. What I think we'll do, we're gonna come back to that. And I think, let's present some of the workshops that we know have been done and are in front of us. Sonia, I'm going to ask you if you would be willing, and again, you do not have to go line by line.
no.
But Sonia was tasked with looking at the office of the auditor, the internal auditor. And Sonia, I will turn the floor over to you for a bit of a recap.
Yes, I made copies
Yep.
because I.
This is this, everyone?
Yes, the big copy, because I am not going to go line by
Right.
line.
Thank you.
And I also want you to turn to the second page and see what's in bold, because I am a big believer in giving credit where credit is due. I love a table. And Laura Hurley had a table that she did in April 2021, and I looked up some things, and I did look at each charter, but she had the format already, and she had a lot of the information and the packet together, so yay for me
As
picking.
usual, thank you.
Right, yay for me picking the workshop that you did 95% of it, thank you, appreciate you. But just overall for what I would say for the counties, for the county auditor, and we talked about workshopping this, and I'm gonna just kind of say this, I guess loosely. We were talking about the county executive needs to also approve the appointment of the county auditor. And no county in Maryland that has an executive kind of form of government has that. If you look at Montgomery County, you might see that it looks like executive branch, but they have an inspector general. And when you go back and you look at the whole process, it still is the legislative branch that it's reported to. So with this in mind and the way that we have 305 written right now, it looked like there was no action that was taken. We were talking about exploring this and kind of workshopping it. I would say leave it as it stands for 305. And I don't know if that's what you want, if you wanted a recommendation to come with the workshop, if it was supposed to be just purely facts. or
Sonia, the way we were thinking about it is, if I'm recalling, and help me out, is that anyone who did the workshop got the opportunity to do the research on their own and then bring forward a recommendation to do something or to not do something.
Right.
And all that is the recommendation of the person who did the workshop. So absolutely, if you are recommending that 305, no change be made based on your research, that's what, I don't want to put word, that's what you just said, correct? So that's what we asked. So, Sonia, basically, we're not an outlier when it comes to how our internal auditor position. We are fairly consistent with the other counties that have this form of government, right?
Yes.
Okay. So that is her recommendation. Is there any more discussion on Section 305? Laura, yes, please.
Actually, on the score sheet,
Yep.
you guys did pass a motion. So you
Does it says a no action.
Well, it says no action
Uh-huh.
initially, but then the motion was reworded.
Okay, so there is one?
Yeah, there is one.
So I didn't read the full, okay.
So you might want to
Yes, ma'am, because I saw no action. I was like, oh, okay. Oh, so to change, it's in black and white on mine, sorry.
Are we going to the scorecard?
Yes, we're going to the scorecard 305, the one that passed that I did not see, to change the language in the first section F to add "and the county executive."
Got it, right.
Right.
So,
And so, a motion needs to be made to not do that?
reconsider, is that right? Yep. If you would make a motion to reconsider,
I move to reconsider adding, oh Lord, county executive and eliminate the last line of section F.
reconsider the change we made to 305.
Okay. And reconsider the change that we made to 305.
Thank you. Is there a second for that?
I'll second.
Thank you, David. Any discussion? So this is again just a vote to reconsider. All those in favor of the motion on the floor to reconsider, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. That passes. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Now, we would then entertain a motion to, actually, Laura and/or Phil, I'm looking at, now that we've reconsidered 305, if we're not going to make a change, do we have to make a motion to rescind the action that we took? Or did we just do that with the reconsideration? Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Help me out.
Reconsider, if we want to make a change to what we voted on, and it passed 8-6.
Yep.
Then we have to make the change.
We have to make a motion.
To do it by the motion to reconsider.
Okay, so would somebody like to make a motion to change the action that we took on 305? Am I saying that right, Phil or Bob? Help me out.
I'll make the motion that we revert back to the language that's already in the charter of 305 and leave it the way it is.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Who said that? Sonia?
Sonia.
Now we have discussion on that, because I want to make sure that we're procedurally correct. Laura is nodding her head. I'm not talking about whether we agree with the motion, but procedurally. Are you?
Another way to do it.
Yes, sir.
And I don't mean to belabor this.
No.
Robert's Rules.
No, I like it.
The motion was made to change it and add the words county executive.
Yes.
So we could reconsider and have another vote on that. If it passes, then that stays in. If it fails, then it's not in anymore. And there is no action. There is no change. But what Bob said is fine. That'll do the same thing.
Okay. Thank you. No, and we like to try to follow, if we think we're okay with the motion on the floor, which would effectively eliminate our recommendation to add the county executive. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, Sharon, yes, please.
I just want to be clear.
Uh-huh.
Why didn't we ask the maker and the seconder of the motion to
Send it.
Because, I'm sorry, I think you could have done that too.
Okay, so we now have three different options of how we're trying to do the same thing.
Well, I'm saying that because if the person who made the motion and seconder, and it was approved
Yep.
that way, and you're asking then the maker and the seconder to rescind that approval, and
And it stays the same too.
it stays, right.
But Sharon, I think we want a recorded vote. The vote was recorded 8-6. If we just,
Send it.
if the motion, that's just two people making the decision, but all of us will be making the decision if we reconsider it and have a vote on it. My vote will count and your vote will count.
Right, I get that.
So I really appreciate that we truly, everybody, thank you for bringing three different options of way, and all of them would be correct. But the one on the floor is the motion to eliminate the county executive. That motion was made by Bob, seconded by Sonia. We've had discussion. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, so I believe we just removed the change to 305. Thank you, Sonia. Thank you for your workshop. Thank you for our parliament. Hey, the worst thing that can be said about it is that we're trying to Robert's Rules of Order to death, bring on those charges. We'll stand as charged. Thank you. Yes, Tony? Yeah, would you? So, yeah, when we speak, pull your mics down. Thank you. Yes, sir. Thank you, Tony. Next, we had a workshop. Michelle had a workshop, but she sent an email. And Michelle, if you'll speak into the mic and why your workshop item ultimately was sort of a moot point.
Okay, mine was a moot point basically because everyone in this room decided that you do not want to go to an administrative form of government back from executive, and it makes no sense to go through the differences and why we ended up where we are if the folks in here don't want to do anything with it. It's just a moot point and a waste of time.
Okay, thanks. So she sent me an email. I just wanted to put that one on the table, and thank you, Michelle. Matt Tillman, you and I were responsible for sections 407 and B and C, which is the vacancy in the Office of County Executive. So Matt, I'll turn the first part of the floor over to you, please.
Okay, you have a handout that Laura just handed out as we were sitting down. Basically, what I did is I went through all of the elected Maryland County Executive charters that were sent to us in our original packets. So if something's changed since those were done, I didn't pick that up. But anyway, so I did that. It struck me as I went through that in a lot of cases, we were very similar to the other counties. For example, several of them, if you look under Wicomico County on the first page of my document, it's on the first page, Wicomico section 407. Under B, they talk about it being elected to, if it happens during the first 12 months, the new executive will be nominated and elected by qualified voters of the county at the same time as members of the House of Congress of the United States are nominated and elected. And there were, I would say, over half of them had that in there. And under C, for Wicomico County, vacancy shall be permanently filled by the members of the council. The term shall is, and I'm not a lawyer, but shall versus may is a very strong term. So in my opinion, the council failed to honor our charter by not making a choice and on a new council person, a new county executive. But anyhow, so as I went through it, I kind of came to the conclusion that kind of where we are is not that bad. There are probably some things that we can do. I think the county council should be required to do something, to take a position as the current charter is set up, and I think that is appropriate. And in the interim, the administrative director is the acting, which is kind of where we've ended up now. So that's kind of what I look at. So I don't look at seeing any major changes at this particular juncture.
And then the other, thank you, Matt. The other, we were co-tasked with looking into this, and I concluded the same things, that we're within the ballpark. But I do think that right now, remember, as a result of the vacancy requirement, when Mr. Culver passed away, the county council was tasked with choosing someone within 45 days. They chose someone, but they did not choose any of the people who had applied, if you will. And what they ended up doing was appointing the county administrator, who's Mr. Pasota, as the acting county executive for approximately 2.5 years. So what we have now as a result of that, we have an acting county executive who's really doing 3 jobs. He's doing the county executive job. he's doing the job, the county administrator job, and he's doing the assistant county administrator job because we don't have an assistant county administrator. Wayne Strausberg, as we know, not here tonight, but Wayne is on a bit of a contractual situation with the county where he does some work on behalf of the office of the acting county executive. So because Matt and I both agree that the Wicomico County Council failed, and we had a Councilman Hastings walk to the podium, and he thought that they failed also. His opinion in C, which is a vacancy occurring, that they fill it within 45 days. For consideration, and that's all it is, I'm going to put something on the floor. If, again, a vacancy occurs, I'm proposing for consideration that if that vacancy occurs with less than 3 years left on the term, that we hold a special election for county executive, for the office of county executive. If the absence occurs within 1 year of the end of the term, we would consider appointing the county administrator to fill out the remaining 12 months or the remainder of the term of the executive. So in other words, what we do now, what most counties do, is they appoint someone. And since we have recent history as a guide, and hopefully this doesn't happen often, but recent history suggests that the county council ended up appointing the county administrator to do 3 jobs for 2.5 years. I think that's a bit much. So I'm suggesting the possibility of holding a special election. That's the thought that I'm laying on the table, to go up, go down, have discussion, stick to what we're doing, call it a day, but that's a proposal to consider. If it's as clear as mud, let me know. So let's use the current term, 2018 to 2022. If a vacancy were to occur within the first 3 years of that 2018 up to November of 21, there would be a special election for the office of county executive. If the vacancy were to occur after November 21 and before November 22, we would propose that the county administrator assume the job of county executive to fill out that term through November of 22. It's just an idea, and it's either a good one or a bad one.
All I'm saying, Mike, is you're saying just the county administrator. That's putting an awful tall order for whoever your county administrator is. I think that needs to be an open appoint.
It could be anyone could be appointed to that position.
But I mean, you're doing a specification there.
Right, I'm with you. Instead of saying the county administrator must be appointed to the job.
In fact, I think anytime that vacancy falls out there, whether it's in the first 6 months or a year or 2, whatever, I think appointing the county administrator, appointing any person of that type into that position is wrong. That person already has a full-time job to fulfill. And you're putting one heck of a burden. So you really need to go outside of looking at the administrator. You need
That's
to
a great point.
You need to appoint someone like other counties do, or you need an election, one or the other.
To Michelle's point, other counties don't specifically say they got to appoint the county administrator. They say go appoint someone. And that's a great point. We're all in agreement that the end, I don't know if we're all in agreement. There is some agreement that having one person do 3 jobs has not turned out to be a good scenario. Dallas, please.
I agree with Michelle, but another issue with appointing the administrator, the current language tries to keep the appointment, when the vacancy occurs, the current language tries to keep it within the same political party. So if you had a Republican that left, you had a Republican that's being replaced.
Yes.
we don't know what the political leanings of the administrator are. I just feel like it's not quite fair to the voters. So I agree with Michelle. It should not be the administrator, and we should probably just
Go to the same party that person was.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree. The
I-
process of, okay, let's do the special election for years, 1 through 3, and then when we hit year 4, do an appointment from the council, but have
party.
of the same party.
Thank you. Good thought. Catherine, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I just see it as a great compromise, and that would have been a great resolution to the problem that we did encounter. So you're recommending that if it's 3 years, that would be a special election, but if it's less than a year, that the county council has 45 days? We're going to stick with the 45 days? Or you're recommending 45 days to appoint someone to that position?
Yes, of the same party is what I think.
It's a nice little compromise, because county council will still have the power, if it's less than a year, to do that and still be within their privy, but then it gives the voters of Wicomico County for 3 years a better opportunity to select who they want. So I love the idea.
Catherine,
good.
Tony, I saw your hand up. Thank you, Catherine.
Isn't that what we sort of ran into this time, that they had 45 days? People had to apply. They got 3 applicants, and they ended up not
Basically,
one of them,
yeah.
and they picked John Pasota. How do you, well, I don't have a solution, but how do you avoid that happening again? Really detrimental, I thought, to this county.
Sure. Laura had a comment. You want to step to the microphone for us? Thank you.
I just want to clarify, the council did appoint someone?
Yes.
He withdrew?
Yes.
Yeah. So,
And,
so they did take action?
That's right.
So why wouldn't they have gone back a second time?
When they
Right,
went
didn't
back
they go
the
back
second time, that's when they chose Mr. Pasota. And,
So he actually applied for that?
Applied, though.
Yeah,
no, they
that's what I'm
chose him, to
saying.
your point. I don't think he was asked. He was
asked.
He was asked. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And to be clear, Laura and I had conversation about this. The action that the council took was legal. They got legal opinion that they could do, thus they did it. So anyway, here's yes, Bob, please, and please speak into your mic for Tony. Thank you.
Sorry.
Yep.
Section 407, what you're basically saying is change 407B and C and take 12 out and put 36 in.
Whoa, yeah, potentially. You've
I mean,
boiled it down very well.
It's almost that simple, isn't it?
Wow. To be honest, I hadn't thought it
Well,
out
I mean,
that
right
far.
now, the process is if it's during the first 12 months, and you're saying 36 months, and then if it's after the first 12 months and there's an appointment process, you're saying instead of
I'm saying that.
12 months, make it 3 years.
That's
I think literally it's just a matter of changing a 12 to 36 in those 2 paragraphs.
Do we want to,
the other thing that I wanted to.
do we want to leave in the, let's say it happens right around the election of the House
Midterm.
of Representatives.
Yeah.
And now we've got to wait 2 years before we can have the vote. Are we proposing that they would have a vote within 3 months, 90 days?
As I was
100?
thinking about it, so again, just use the current term. If we had to have the special election in 2019, that person would be elected for the remainder of the term that the executive had already been elected to. Not into the next House election, but into the fulfilling the term of office.
So when would that election occur? And Mr. Wilbur, how hard
that's-
is it to set up a special
Yep,
election?
that's one of the things, thank you, that's one of the questions that we had. So, to be determined, the time frame and rolling out those machines costs how much?
Right, that's Tony.
Who fills in the interim?
Yeah,
Well, in the
Anthony.
interim, I think you don't have one, right?
Yeah.
That's happened before. Or the county administrator would be no, but somebody has to sign documents. There has to be some, that's all I'm saying, not the duties, but maybe the signer.
Yeah. I think at the Board of Elections, I don't know exact cost of running a special election, but certainly you'd have to have time enough for them to set it up.
Yes.
So that's probably 6 to 8 weeks.
By the way, I haven't fully thought out. I don't have all the answers to this proposal. I'm fully acknowledging that. When Matt and I were talking today, and he raised that question, and I said, well, whatever the cost is, what's the cost of having one person do 3 jobs relative to efficiency of government and performance of government? Is it, I don't know how much the machines cost. Let's say they cost $50,000 to set up an election. Might that be money well spent in order to avoid having one person do 3 jobs, which is what we currently have?
It's feasible, though. We're not adding some new bizarre process. There are special elections all the time. Yes, they cost extra money. How often do they actually occur?
Correct.
You know, we've had executive for almost 2 decades. It's happened one time. You know, I mean, it's logistically it's possible. Can it get worked out? Sure. We're just laying out the process, and we've not thrown in any type of new procedure that's coming out of left field. It's okay. This is a common tool in the box. Let's just use it to address the issue. And I don't see the cost or the procedure itself of timing being the issue, because it is something that we've done in the past many times.
Well, let's do this, being consistent with what we've attempted to do. I'm always reluctant to make a motion just as the chair. I know I can. Does anybody want to make a motion to put on the floor for discussion, and then we could wordsmith it, and then if it passes, get a little bit more in depth relative to some of the details?
The chair can entertain that a motion be made and say what that motion would be, and then somebody else can make the motion.
The chair would entertain a motion that we alter 407B and work out a plan for a special election concept, whereas in the first 3 years of a vacancy, a special election would be held. If a vacancy occurred in the 4th year of the term, someone from the same party would be appointed by the county council. Some motion like that would be entertained by the chair. Thank you, Phil.
Enjoying this.
Oh, I know he is. I know he is.
I've been there.
He's been there, and he's really good at it.
I know you can't.
You'll make that motion, Matt? There's a second on that motion. Doug, thank you. Catherine?
So just like what Bob was saying, if B is changed to, if a vacancy occurs during the first 36 months of a term, then there would be a special election. And then C, if a vacancy occurs after the first 36 months of a term, the vacancy shall be permanently filled by resolution of the members of the county council. So it's just a matter of changing, flipping those 2 numbers, and that's pretty simple.
We probably need to address the House of Representatives line and delete that. Delete, let's see, non-elected by quality at the same time. Well,
Can I be the devil's advocate?
You absolutely may.
I always am.
Michelle. No,
Okay.
yes, please. That's why we're all here.
It's month 35, and
Say again?
county executive goes croakers, okay? No more county executives. So at month 35, now all of a sudden, you're going to create a special election that's probably not even going to occur. You're in the 10th month left. I mean, there's got to be some thought about this.
Guilty that I have not, absolutely. No, that's in the 35th month, if a vacancy occurs, you roll out a campaign that occurs, and then the person is sworn in as the county executive. And then if he or she wanted to keep that job, they'd have to run again in about 3 months.
Yep.
Correct.
Yeah.
The chances of that happening are slim, but they're absolutely a possibility. So
With Judge Sarbanes, that's what happened there.
yeah, that's right. He got appointed, and then he had to. So with that caveat, and that's part of the discussion, we're acknowledging that could be a possibility. And would we still be then okay with that? Phil, yes, sir.
Just for discussion.
Yes, that's where we are.
I think this whole thing comes up, as you have said, we have an acting county executive doing 3 jobs.
Yes.
Wayne's not here. If he were here, I would say it in front of him.
Of course.
If he hadn't been going to retire, he would have been the logical person, and he wouldn't have engendered so many objections to becoming the county executive because he was a known entity.
Yeah.
As opposed to Mr. Pasota, who was an unknown entity. So that's the scenario. We're trying to make some sort of legislative change to talk about something that might happen again in the next 112 years or something.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm not. The other thing about the administrative director, if you want to call him that, county administrator, they have all kinds of qualifications, educational experience, et cetera, as opposed to the person that just says, okay, I'm a registered voter, so I'm gonna apply. There's some wisdom to choosing that person, male or female,
Absolutely.
to fill out that term.
Yeah.
So I would be in favor of leaving it the way it is, but for those reasons.
One of the things I might suggest, I know we have a motion and a second, is going to get into Robert's rules again. We're flying by the seat of our pants a little bit here, and what we've done in the past over these last 6 or 7 months, we've asked Laura or Paul to perhaps wordsmith and then bring it back to us in a wordsmithed way for us to consider it more in full and more complete.
We're just talking about changing numbers right now.
Yeah, but there's still some language, and we have to work out the
You've got to add something in about special elections.
special elections and terms and time frame and all of that. So I know there's as currently proposed, I think I'd even vote against the motion because we haven't thought it out well enough, in my opinion. So parliamentary-wise, we could take a vote on the motion to see if there's any, and Phil, going back to you've made this suggestion, why don't we vote on the motion and then we have the wordsmithing, and then it's, if we need to change it, we've done that, I think, with some other things that we've done as a committee. So,
I think that would be best.
who made the motion?
Matt?
Matt, would you?
I will withdraw the motion.
Thank you. And can we get some wordsmithing? Very good. Who? Thank you, Doug. All right, good discussion. Thank you. Anybody need a break? We've got about another 20 minutes before public comments. Are we good? All right. Thank you for that discussion, everyone. Thank you, Matt, for your workshopping partnership. Paul, we are now going to turn to you, back to your update on various topics, but more importantly, your bond recommendations, which have been submitted to everyone.
Okay.
So again, this is the memorandum on the summary of the Lindsay Rader recommendations. That was sent out via email, and Paul also has some suggested amendments regarding our borrowing powers. So Paul, we're going to turn the floor over to you, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Lindsay Rader, the county's bond counsel up in Baltimore, sent down suggested rewording. I've looked at those sections. Pam Olin, the finance director, has also looked at them, and we like the suggestions that Lindsay made. As I tried to mention in my short memo, these recommendations for changes are to try to make our bonding process more flexible, more user-friendly, allows the executive and the council to use bond proceeds that are perhaps not fully spent on one project and move them over to another project. Just take something that's more cumbersome perhaps right now and make it easier to deal with for the government. So we have, I'd say Pam and I would recommend that we just forward this on to the council, see if they're inclined to include it.
So I'm trying to hear this, we would recommend, without getting too far into the weeds,
Right.
that we would say as a charter review committee that upon the recommendation of the county attorney and our bond attorney and our finance director,
Right.
that in totality, in toto,
Yep.
we would recommend these changes to section 313, section 710, 712. What about all these other ones? 704, adoption of budget, all of these also, Paul?
Yes, I would recommend that you move everything forward to the council.
So everybody following that, right, there was a one-page memo, and then there was the three-pager, and Paul is sharing that the finance director, our bond counsel, and our county attorney all think these would be good things to send forward, and then let the county council, right, Paul?
Right.
Figure out what they think of these recommendations and then how to get them on the ballot.
I so move, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Phil.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Julie. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor?
Just to be
Yes,
clear,
sir, Bob.
we're recommending the three-page,
Yes,
section 312, 313,
yes,
704, 705, and 712.
yes.
And we're also recommending what's on the one-page
Well, but the
memo.
one page is from the other.
It's from
That's
you.
just a summary.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bob. Any other discussion or questions? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Well, that was, thank you, Paul.
Well, I have a couple of
I
other
know, I'm
minor
saying the
ones.
bond one was probably the biggest rabbit hole that
Give me
we've
my
been
moment,
punting
Mr.
on for about 4 months. So thank you for working through that with us. We appreciate it. Very solid recommendation.
It was easy from my point of view. I just deferred.
Deferred. We all just deferred collectively. Paul, please, your other
There
homework
were a
assignment.
couple of other smaller
sir.
points that I think were asked about. One was what would be for county council the age requirement, is it when they would file a certificate of candidacy or at the date of the election? And what we found is it's not a legal requirement, but that looking at state and other counties, the trend seems to be it's the date of the election. That's the age break point. If you're interested in doing anything in our charter. So you can be too young at the time you file your certificate of candidacy, as long as you are the correct age on the date of the election. That seems to be the overwhelming trend.
Should we probably address that and be more specific? Because I think we've just set ages of 25 and 30, I think.
What section's that?
Yeah, we're in pretty early.
Yeah, I think it's
Qualifications, I see section 202, and then if we go to our score sheet, bear with me, everyone. Yeah, it's 202A.
Right.
Would add a minimum age of 25 years to be a member of the county council. And I guess, Paul, we would be saying minimum of 25 years at the date of the election.
That's the way it's worded in other places. Yeah.
So, as far as I'm aware, these are the only two places where we reference age of anyone. Could we not just add that to the definitions section and say, when age is referenced, it is referring to age at the date of the election? Because it's just, again, I'm not aware of any other place in the charter where age is referenced besides.
That's a good idea.
It's in 405 also for the executive.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So when age is referenced for council and executive, and there's only two places that I believe it is, we just provide a definition that says age equals age at time of election as a definition.
Can I throw a loophole out there?
Who's that? Yes,
Very
Michelle, of
seriously,
course.
Like someone said to me when I was discussing this with them a couple weeks ago, they said, gee, we send people to Ward 18, we let them vote at 18,
Sure.
we let them drink at 21, but they can't represent a district until they're 25.
Right. There are,
I support lowering the age of the drinking limit. I agree with you completely.
you know, we made, again, we made that
I know,
decision.
but I'm just saying.
No, I understand.
It's an
And we-
afterthought, I know.
And we approved it again. So unless, I think we're okay, and I hear you, and we're not gonna make everybody happy, but I like where would the definitions, is that back here in Article 11? Is that where you're saying, Dallas?
Yeah.
So we would add a definition, Paul, that where age is referenced, it's at the time of election.
Okay.
And if I recall correctly, when we did this last time, we said we didn't actually have to, revising definitions did not have to be an amendment or be on the ballot, I believe.
Right.
Can I just make one comment on that?
Of course you can.
I think when someone is going to apply to be an elected official, they're going to look at that charter section, not necessarily the definition
Right,
section.
right.
So it very well may be
Yeah.
overlooked.
Yeah,
If it's hidden back
that's
in
a
the
valid-
definition section.
That's a real good point.
We put a footnote? Yeah, put a little one. I'm just,
Well, we're already changing it to say 25 and to say 30, so I think just adding the new language.
Yeah, it's just a phrase in two sections.
Yes, that's,
okay.
right.
Yeah.
So we need a motion for that, I'm assuming, if we wanted to change that and add that one word, or do you just want to leave it alone? Or do you, help me out here, I know
I would make a motion that
Thank you.
we add the language at the time of election to section
it's 202.
202 and 405.
Thank you. Is there a second for that?
Second.
202 and 405. Thank you. There's a motion and a second discussion on adding this little phrase. Okay, hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Bob. Yes, Paul?
Okay, this one is small, and I think the question was, what power can you give to hold special elections? And that's, yes, you can, if you choose, or if the council chooses to hold special elections in the charter, that's permissible.
Okay.
Okay? It doesn't have to be an appointment, just like you were all just discussing.
So you're saying if we go down this special election road, we're
It's-
allowed to do that?
Yeah, it's an either or. You can do it or not do it.
Okay. Anything else?
That's what I had.
Okay. Looking at the group, we can plow ahead. For 10 more minutes for public comments, where I had us going back now to our scorecard, okay? We're back to our scorecard. We haven't been there for a while. We're at 5:04. And again, we're just going down the scorecard now to see if we're still okay with the recommendation. We had, by my tally, I thought we had gotten through 5:03. If somebody has a different recollection, let me know. Okay, so we're going to go up to 5:04, which was removing the word substantial from 504A. That had to do with substantial changes in, I think, appointments or positions made by the county executive. Yeah, plan of reorganization. We were just going to get rid of the word substantial. We still cool with that? Mm-hmm. All right. In 504, we were going, that's weird, we're going to remove the last section in 505A. The Director of Finance shall be appointed and removed. I'm a little confused by this, and I'm completing that out loud. Can anybody help me on our score sheet? It says 504, and then in the description, it says to remove the last sentence in section 505A. And I'll take anybody who can help us work through this.
This came up when the charter changed from the previous form to this form, and the director of finance took the place of the county treasurer. Isn't that how this all came up?
That's what I'm trying, potentially, Phil. But as I'm looking again, if you go to 505A, what problem might we have had with the sentence that says the director of finance shall be appointed and removed?
That came up with confirmation of appointments.
Can you, go ahead.
Came up with confirmation of appointments. That's when we discussed it, because the former finance director was not confirmed, but of the position.
Okay, so are we good with keeping this change?
My notes say that we took that last sentence out because of section 315, the confirmation, and section 413, administrative appointments.
So it was redundant.
Yes.
Thank Sharon, you're so good. Thank you. So helpful. Okay, so
We've known that for years.
yeah, I know we had that. Thank you, Phil. That is truth right there. So we're good with that?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Sharon, again. 506.
Same thing,
Is that the same thing?
except it's Public Works, yes.
Got it. Okay, so we're cool with that being consistent. 507A, to put a period. Oh my gosh, hold on. To put a period after executive in the second paragraph. The county attorney, shall serve at the pleasure of the executive. It did say at the pleasure of the executive and the council, and so we wanted to get rid of "and the council." So the county attorney shall serve at the pleasure of the executive, period. Okay? We're good with that? Skipping down to 609B. Okay, this had to do with exempting, right, the county executive, and so we're removing this full-time requirement. We're removing this where it says other than the county executive. So it would read, all officers and employees in the executive or legislative branches, members of the county council, the county attorney. So we're getting rid of where it says other than the county executive. Still cool with that? All right, thank you, everyone. Looks like, sorry, I'm lost. Bear with me. Help me out on my score sheet. 609B. When I flip it over,
So 607,
why does it take us back to 601A?
because we did something.
Oh, okay, this, regardless that it might be out of order, this has to do with the, personnel system. And we want it to read, upon the recommendation of the county executive, comma, the county council shall establish a personnel system. Right, okay. Are we good with that?
Yes.
Keeping that? We had pretty good discussion on that? All right, check that one off the box. Two more. Section 707. We will state, and we're recommending that the county council, this has to do with hearing dates regarding capital improvement plans. Is that correct? Is that what this was about? And when they get postponed, we wanted them to also postpone and the public hearings that accompany it, right? So that's the short version of what passed unanimously. Are we still cool with that? Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for bearing with me. And then the last recommendation is, back in that definition part, to add number 15. Oh, okay, right. To where it talks about county commissioners, and we were simply going to state, because we have county council, that wherever it references county commissioner, that it will refer to county council in our case, right? Because we have a county council, not county commissioners. And we're good with that. Okay, I think we've just made a first pass at the scorecard. Congratulations, everyone. Congratulations, everyone. Good job. We're not done yet by any stretch. We've got Paul and Laura going to give us some recommendations on this special election language. And it's about 20 of 7. Is there any other? I'm going to call for public comments a little bit early, unless I look at anybody at the table and see if we've missed anything. All right. Thank you for your patience, everyone, tonight.
I just have a question.
Yes, Sonia?
So what is next? Or you usually do that after the public comments, don't you? Sorry.
No, Sonia, go ahead. What's your question?
I was just asking, I just wanted to understand what was next. Is it the prioritization, or I was going to say, don't you usually do that after the public comments? Am I?
Yes, so
Sorry.
let's talk about what's next. It's all good. No, thank you. What's next is we have gone through the scorecard. We are now going to have to, again, because we have made north of 15 recommendations, and we are going to have a discussion at the next meeting about beginning to prioritize which of these as a group we want to pass along. We can pass along all of them, call it a day, and say to the county council, these are our recommendations. Or, being pragmatic, we can look at some of our recommendations, try to predict what the county council may or may not do, which may be dangerous territory, and try to trim that down. So we'll have that discussion at the beginning of the next meeting. But I think as a group, that's something we need to probably ponder individually. Truly, we could just, the options are lay all of our recommendations on the table. This is the work of the Charter Review Committee. We present it to the county council in total. Or we'll have a discussion about, do we want to look at this in a sense perhaps one more time and see if some of these maybe don't make the cut, if you will. Is that fair?
Mike, if I
Yes, Michelle, absolutely.
further, you have a list of things that were questions that were asked by the council.
Okay.
And a lot of these, I feel, still aren't really fully addressed.
Okay, so let's address that at the next meeting.
I think we have to
Absolutely.
go back and address those items.
Absolutely.
I think those, what's it, 20, and that's off the 3/3/21 revision, am I correct, Laura? That's the correct sheet? Yeah, that's right. And there's 32 items on there.
And let's see if we've gone through them all.
Yeah, I
Okay.
just want to be sure that
Absolutely.
what we've been asked to do, we've accomplished that.
Absolutely.
We're through.
Great idea. Thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
Okay, great work tonight. We're not done yet. Any public comments? It is 6:45. Mr. Taylor, it is very good to know, and I really mean this. The other night I had the pleasure of going to a public hearing on pickleball and revising Harmon Field. And it was the most crowded public hearing I think I've ever seen. I'm talking, whether you're talking about school board budgets or there were 150 people in that room. I think all in support of the proposal to Harmon Field and pickleball. My point in that is that thank you for coming and for your consistent attendance and for representing a whole bunch of the public. Mr. Taylor, the floor is
Appreciate
yours.
it.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it. A couple of things. I want to point out a couple of red herrings.
No worries.
Mr. Dunn, one by you. The appointment to hold 3 positions of the acting county executive. The only reason for the third position, the assistant county administrator, is because the executive branch hasn't filled that position. It's been vacant now, I think, for a year and a half.
Yeah.
Laura?
Yeah.
Year and a half. The council can't do that. They can confirm the appointment, but they can't, of their own initiative, make it. And that's also true, incidentally, of the Public Works Director. I don't know when Dallas resigned. I think it's been about a year. That position's been, again, no appointment, therefore no confirmation, position not filled. I think they just began to advertise that position within the last month. So, I mean, that's really a red herring, and I think we ought to stop talking that the council appointed Mr. Pasota to do 3 jobs. The only reason for the third one I've explained. And on that same line, the council didn't fail in a legal sense to appoint anyone within 45 days. Mr. Wilbur and I both looked at that, and I think Paul will recall and agree that that language is aspirational. It's not mandatory. So nothing was violated. And I think the things need to be put in context and not using terms like that can be easily taken out of context. Moving on, I think everything, I said this before when I was talking to Dr. Basehart, put everything on the website. That means the reports, the work sessions or work groups or whatever they're called, recommendations, get it all out there for a couple of reasons, so the public can see it, number one, and number two, so it will then be a permanent record, easily accessible. Publicize what's going on and hold local public meetings. Interestingly, that was one of the things Dr. Basehart suggested for the review commission, redistricting commission, pardon me, holding public meetings, getting stuff out. This group, I don't think, has done that. I understand we can come in and make comments like I'm doing now.
Sure.
But there hasn't been any effort to really reach out to the public. I would suggest at least 3 public meetings, not here in Salisbury. I'd have one in Fruitland, one on the east side, one on the west side. You can get school auditoriums or other places like that. You're not going to have huge crowds. Moving on, I know you've gone through your scorecard, and that's good procedure. I would select significant recommendations that you really are serious about. There's a lot of stuff on there that frankly is fluff. I understand it's nice to talk about, well, let's take county commissioner out and say county council. I mean, I think we could live without that. We've done so now for 20 years roughly. And it would require a special ballot question. I mean, you know, why do that? But pick significant items and research them further. You really haven't done that. Look at what other counties have done in their charter. Sonia did a great job, I guess, with Laura too, had started on it, with the thing that she discussed tonight. And it resulted in a change of what you had done earlier. And I think there are a lot of things that if you think about them more seriously or more comprehensively, you may change to either decide to either revise them or possibly to drop them. I would also reconsider some things. Lady over here tonight talked about going to 7 districts. Frankly, I think that's a good idea. Somebody else mentioned that, another member of the public, I forget the person's name. I suggested just having 5. In other words, doing away with the at-large districts. I don't think it's a holdover from the past. Dr. Basehart didn't know. I've looked into it a little bit. The trend is away from at-large districts for various reasons, partially legal. We had to go away from it for legal reasons. Another is just purely political. Look at other legislative branches. We have districts in the state legislature. We have districts, essentially state or sub-state districts in the Congress. We don't have at-large districts in any of those. So, I mean, that's the trend, and has been for quite a while, to go to just just districts and not at-large representation. And I think it really makes for a more balanced political spectrum when you do that, when you can't have it controlled from one central area, which is a problem where you have a county that has a central area that has a large percentage of the total population. I think you all should consider recommending, even if you're not in favor of doing away with the county executive system, that it be put on the ballot for people to decide. Whether you, in other words, up or down, let the voters decide. We've now had 2 executives, 4 terms. We've had a chance to see how it operates, and at least the people that I know and talk to, if it were on the ballot, it would be voted down. I know one of the members here, I won't mention the name, has made the comment that he doesn't think that it's served the county well so far. His solution is to throw more money at it. My solution would be to eliminate it. I don't think it can be fixed in a small county like this by throwing money at it in the long term. The other thing I want to say, I would have said this had I known he was not going to leave, but Dr. Basehart is a political activist. He's been a member of the Democrat Central Committee for quite a while. At the Democrat Club meeting in March of this year, he's quoted in the minutes, he advocated 1st District, that would be the 1st District in Congress, Democrats actively engage members of the General Assembly to consider altering the current district configuration to make it more competitive for Democrat candidates. Short summary of that, get rid of Andy Harris. He's a political activist, and I think that should be noted. Now, these schemes they've come up with, including Governor Hogan's, they're really a wolf in sheep's clothing. They make it look like it's going to be more even and fair and representational. You heard the buzzwords. But really what it does is it allows the party that dominates in a particular area to dominate that. I would and incidentally, when I asked him, he didn't have any complaints about any of our redistricting commissions since he's been here, and a political science prof at SU, and now retired, I guess. So, I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It really doesn't need to be fixed. I would much rather have each of my council members choosing someone who they think is competent and is going to do a good job, and not leave it to some kind of a groupthink decision where obviously it's going to go one way or the other depending on the party in power. So I would conclude my remarks with that and just suggest that you keep going.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Taylor.
I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. Will you lower your microphone,
I know we
please?
don't normally do this, but I do have a question for Mr. Taylor. And it's not personal, but let's assume that the committee revisited the issue of going from 5 and 2 to 7 districts, and that got put on the ballot next election. Since it's been redistricted now, and that's not going to be done for another 10 years, when do we go from, I mean, can you do that at the next election? How do you do that?
Well, your election coming up for next year, no, you couldn't do it. You'd have to keep it like it is, 5 and 2. But 4 years from on, it could be done that way. That would be the effective date of the change, unless you wanted to extend it out further. Well, and one thing, incidentally, that I did forget to say, if I have another minute, on the redistricting change generally, and Dr. Basehart was correct about this, it would not take, for these same reasons, it wouldn't take effect, redistricting of the geographic districts I'm talking about now, until 10 years.
Right, 2031.
So there's really no need to do anything in next year's election, because the council can change the charter every 2 years. It's not every 10 years. We have redistricting commissions on a 10-year sequence, but every general election, they can change the charter. And frankly, there was really no reason to do it much earlier than 2030 because, for a number of reasons, as I mentioned, you have these legal parameters, and they can change. Believe me, there are going to be a whole slew of redistricting suits this year. There are already a lot, and it changes. And in 2 or 3 years, some of them will probably be up at the Supreme Court, and they'll be changing some of those things. The 5 and 5 rule may become the 3 and 3 rule, or the 8 and 8 rule. Who knows? So frankly, there's really not any reason to do anything to change redistricting until, say, 26 or 28, when you have a better view of what's going to happen in this interim period of 6 or 8 years. I just forgot to mention that, but I think it's worth considering.
Thank you. Okay, everybody, thank you for all your hard work tonight, your diligence. We'll see you in, our next meeting is when, Laura? 2 weeks from tonight?
21st.
21st, October the 21st is our next meeting, right here at 5 o'clock. Thank you, everyone. We're adjourned.